After 8 years in a relationship that I considered healthy and loving, I found that my husband was leading a double life in every way. Now I will tell you what I did to get back at him. He tried his best to talk to the girls, and for the most part he was rejected. No one wanted to date him. I found out about it that weekend, got on Tinder and contacted a bunch of guys. Literally handpicked the guy I wanted to have sex with, told my husband what I was going to do. He watched me get dressed and leave the house. All it took was one message, and that night I had sex with this guy several times in the back seat of his work car. After that, I went home and told my husband what I'd done to show him that as long as he was trying to cheat on me, I always had the power, but I never did. Everything he wanted to do with other girls, men wanted to do with men. That night I enjoyed watching him cry. He lost his appetite. He didn't eat or sleep that night, and several times I heard him vomit. I slept with this Tinder guy a few times and went on a few dates. I saw my husband almost have a panic attack or stomach ache when I said, "I'm leaving." I officially changed our children's names to my last name, deprived him of the honor that our children bear his last name. I saw his messages in which he told the girls that he did not have a wife and children. I didn't care about denying myself, but denying the existence of our beautiful children because of pussy. Fuck off. It is also a double whammy, as I will soon give birth to his first and only son, who will bear my last name. When he grows old and dies, none of his children will have either his last name or our heritage. That is, our grandchildren. I talked him into getting a vasectomy, which was something we agreed on before the infidelities got out, because I was done with kids and contraceptives. But ever since his machinations came out, that too was revenge. He thought about not doing it, saying, "Well, you're leaving me anyway." Managed to persuade him. I got a kick when it was done, knowing that if he wanted to start a new family after us, I would take away his ability to reproduce. Plus, with his lustful hunger, my kids wouldn't have to worry about multiple half-siblings running around. I'm done with the kids, but the fact that I still can is also like, hey, moment. Finally, I fed him the false hope that they would stay together. He knows that after 8 long years of giving him chance after chance, and he was losing by constantly cheating, he knows he has reached the end, so he desperately wants to do something so that I don't leave. I'm going to talk him into tattooing my name permanently on his body, simply because it will make him look like a complete idiot. He took me for granted in every way. He was a narcissist. He gaslighted me when I had my suspicions. He was a compulsive liar and serial cheater. I raised our children. I sacrificed so much time, energy and pieces of myself for this man. The years of my life have passed. He made me stay with him because he decided to lead a double life. I know I look like a pissed off bitch, but I needed to get this out of my system. When I was 22 or 23, I was living in a Utah college town, and if you were single, you were living with roommates. Very few people lived on their own mostly because it was just too expensive, but I think, subconsciously, all of the Mormons were waiting to get married. I was living in a 2-bedroom townhouse with 2 other ladies who shared the master bedroom, and I had the smaller bedroom. It was a really depressive time in my life as well, so if I wasn't working, I spent quite a bit of time in my room by myself. It was a lonely time. These 2 ladies, who were a few years younger if I remember, were friendly with the women living next door, and while I did try and be part of the group, I was in such a dark place that I eventually retreated to the solitude I'd created. I never bothered them, was tidy and even cooked from time to time for the house, because it's something I enjoyed, but in the end, they did not like my solitary ways. When the lease was set to be renewed, they asked that I find another place to live. And that's when things went downhill. They became mean girls, accusatory, unkind. They tried to saddle me with all of the house bills, accused me of damage and stealing. I couldn't believe how quickly it all turned, and it added to my despair day after day. One day, roommate 2 started screaming at me because she felt I disrespected their boyfriend. I stood there, took it, because I knew I was leaving soon for a new apartment, where I was going to be the only tenant. but I was seething inside. After a day or two, I put my revenge plan in motion. They both worked at the same retail store and drove together, so there was a set of keys left behind. It was going to be a hot August day. First, I uncapped a permanent Sharpie marker and tucked it under a box that was under roommate 1 bed. I imagined that it would slowly stain the carpet, unable to be removed. She would be held responsible for the damage. Small but satisfying. Second, employed an oldie but goodie and cleaned the 2 toilets with their toothbrushes. I did run them through the dishwasher after, because I didn't want to physically hurt them. I just wanted to picture it in my mind and smile. Finally, I poured a large glass of whole milk and grabbed roommate 2's car keys. Her car was parked in the sun. I opened the back door and slowly poured the glass of milk down the seatbelt hole in the middle of the seat. Have you ever smelled spoiled milk? It was early morning when I did this, so there was ample time for the milk to sit all day in the hot car. I grabbed my own keys and headed off to work. My soul was at peace. I had another week in that place before I moved out, and on more than one day I saw roommate 2, trying to figure out where that terrible smell was coming from. It never occurred to her that I had done it. That was 30 years ago, and the memory still brings a smile to my face and peace to my soul. I hope she's had the life she deserves. I took revenge on my 75-year-old neighbor. During this time, I had some problems with my next-door neighbor, lady who lives alone and is between 70 and 80 years old. Previously, I have caught her trespassing into my property on 4 different occasions with different excuses that she wanted to see my yard, in another that she wanted to repair something in her house and it was easier for my yard, etc. And besides that, we always have a problem with her daughter parking in my house, blocking my entrance and leaving for a couple of hours, which forces me to park 2 blocks away from my own house. If they happen to be at their house, they would just purposely ignore me and move their car whenever they want. Unfortunately, calling a tow company or the police is not an option in my country. I previously called them, and neither of them arrived. These were minor issues with her, until last week when we had a more delicate situation. It was Thursday and around 1 p.m, time when I usually wouldn't be home. I had a worker fixing some things in my yard, so he was making a reasonable amount of noise. That day I had not parked my car in the garage and was working from home in my living room looking down the street. When I looked up, I saw my neighbor peeking into my house, noticing that my car was not there, and running and shouting things at my worker. Was it possible that he was making noise? That she was trying to sleep? That he was not polite? That he was shameless? Blah blah. When I realized this situation, I ran out to where she was and asked, "What do you think you are doing?" To which she turns around and starts yelling at me, all this inside my property. I start to get upset and tell her, "I don't care about your point of view. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Get off my property or I will call the police." She kept yelling at me and saying that I had to be quiet because she was an old lady. My boyfriend heard all the commotion and came out to see what was going on. She turned to look at my boyfriend, turned to look at me and said, "That's why you think you can argue with me? Now I get it. You are just a couple of queers." To which I took out my cell phone, started recording and replied, "Repeat again what you just said." And she, with all certainty, repeated it, adding that we were going to hell and that God was going to punish us. She finally got off my property and went home. I went back to mine, and with the anger I had at the time, I drafted and filed a discrimination and trespassing complaint against her. I was also about to upload the video to social media, but my boyfriend stopped me from doing it. The complaint that I filed is not a criminal case, since I do not have sufficient grounds for it, but I filed the complaint before Human Rights Commissions. A week after the incident, I was notified that my complaint did not have sufficient grounds for a case, but that they offer me a conciliation forum between me and my neighbor. This, of course, is useless. However, this is where I might have taken it too far. I scanned the document, and I edited it a little bit, and basically added that the commissions warns my neighbor that if she continues trespassing, blocking my entrance and faulting me and my boyfriend with homophobic comments, she would be liable to criminal consequences in order to keep her out of my business. I left the document as if the commission had notified her and waited to see if she would cede. I saw when she picked it up from her entrance and could see the panic on her face and ran inside her house. Since then, I have not had a single problem with her. She never parks at my entrance. She does not even dare to stare at me or my property. I know that I might have taken things too far, but at the end of the day, there was no harm done. After all, if there are no consequences, she would have continued her behavior, and now we can all mind our own business.